interesting, trends and turns and lately, but I'm really glad that we can have this conversation. I've been doing nonprofit work for over 15 years, and that spanned from small nonprofits in Boston to national nonprofits here in DC where I live. And I'm currently doing consulting work where I can use all of my experiences and do community engagement, different social impact work. So really, really excited to moderate this panel. I actually had the opportunity to sit on a panel just like this for Northeastern in 2021 when Michelle Rapp actually asked me to do it, and so that's why she asked me to moderate today. So really glad to moderate this conversation and want to allow our dynamic panelists to introduce themselves. So I will start with Dominique.
Gotta make sure I come off mute because it's the whole thing. But I'm Dominique Calix. My pronouns are she, her. I currently work at the Boston Foundation in Boston, and I am the leadership gift officer. Prior to that, I worked in the development space at a number of nonprofits in Boston, focused on equity, women, and girls, and education. So have a long tenure in the nonprofit space, and at one point even taught at Northeastern in the nonprofit management program, which I am an alum of. I graduated in 2020. I was one of the pandemic um, graduations.
Awesome. Anya, would you be able to go next?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Anya or Anya Naya Muse. I am a proud Mills alum. So I graduated the first time from Mills in 2008. I was a PLE legal major, so political, legal, economic analysis. That long acronym that I used to joke and say just means I'm broke and looking for work. But I ended up in nonprofit after PLE. And then my second degree from Mills was in 2014, and I did education, so a master's in education with a focus really on nonprofit leadership in educational spaces. The thing I loved about Mills is that you could build your degree out in this kind of bespoke way. So my first nonprofit area was a organization called Lifetime, and that work really kind of seeded the future for me in terms of working in both public policy and nonprofit work and being able to mix the background of education and also political science. So that is who I am. I just recently stepped away from the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, which is a completely different type of nonprofit, but that's where I was for the last 5 years. Glad to be here with
Great.
everybody.
Thank you so much. Heather?
Hi, everybody. I'm Heather Stone. I'm the development manager for the Food Bank of Contra Costa and Solano counties. I'm a Mills class of 2018. I'm a resumer. I made a change midlife to go from the for-profit world into the nonprofit world. And I'm so happy to be a Mills alum and to be a part of this panel today. I handle our volunteer program, our direct mail program, our donor relations program, and handle about a $5 million fundraising budget right now. My focus at Mills was on women's reproductive health and social justice, and I'm really happy to be here today.
Thank you so much. And last but certainly not least, Jade.
Hey everyone, to see you. My name is Jade Arn. I am the Director of Engagement at Brookings Metro, which is one of 5 research programs at the Brookings Institution in Washington, D.C. I have worked in the nonprofit space my entire career and even did volunteer work and served on a board of directors at a nonprofit organization before beginning my undergrad program. It's actually been about 20 years, a little over 20 years that I've worked in nonprofits, spanning from really sort of direct service provision type work and organizations to, much like Jasmine was just saying, national nonprofit organizations doing work across the country. And my roles have evolved very significantly across my career. I went to get my master's from Northeastern in project management with an organizational communication concentration sort of midway through my career, looking for an opportunity to have a broad-based degree that would apply to a variety of different jobs and be relevant in different sectors, not knowing if I would kind of continue on indefinitely in the nonprofit space, but I have in fact done that. So really happy to be with you here today and looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome, awesome. So our first question is, how did your education prepare you for your current role? And I'm gonna, whoever wants to jump in, but I'll tell just a short story for me before I pass it off, is that I was a political science major. We all know that we have co-op. I will never forget the first day of my co-op. I was at Mass Vote, and someone told me to do GOTV efforts. And I sat at my desk and almost cried and was like, what is Go TV? Where's the TV at? Where are we going? And so I was really embarrassed by that as a political science major, but I say all that to say that experiential education really helped. So wanted to just pass it over to any of our panelists if anyone wants to talk about how their education prepared them for their current roles.
I can kick us off. Like I said, I've been through a number of different nonprofits and different subject areas. And so a lot of the nonprofits I actually worked at were rather small. And I knew very early on in my career that I wanted to be in the nonprofit space. And I was a sponge and I wanted to learn and I wanted to like make sure that the work that I was doing was going to have an impact for organizations. But with being at a super small nonprofit, one of my first jobs in the nonprofit space, I was on a development team of 1.5, and I was the one, not the point 0.5. And so I was learning from somebody who wasn't there all the time, which really kind of made me think like, how can I learn more about the space so that I can bring this knowledge back to my organization, which then led me to be like, maybe I should get a master's. And here I was at Northeastern, getting the master's and getting to learn from people who are actual practitioners in the space, which was so important to me as I was like thinking about how I wanted to go about learning. I wanted to make sure that I was getting practical advice from somebody so that I can then go back and go to my organization and make an impact and do what needs to be done for such a small like startup organization that was doing very meaningful work in the community.
Yes, thank you so much. Anya, it looks like you.
Yeah, so the thing about Mills that really supported me was the first nonprofit I worked for that I mentioned, Lifetime, stood for Low Income Families Empowerment Through Education. And this was an organization that had been created by a Berkeley alum who actually started the children's school and the daycare, and a lot of welfare recipients and resuming students. So anybody who was on welfare, anybody who was coming into Mills later in life, or just as what was considered a resuming student, had these opportunities to get support through public policy. And Lifetime was introduced to me by one of my professors, who actually just passed away, Dr. Marianne Sheldon. And she and Dr. Paul Schulman were so important in really helping me craft a career and not just kind of haphazardly taking any job, even though you need to work, like just being very clear about what you actually want and that you would earn these degrees that gave you access and opportunity. So my work with Lifetime found me as the national policy director within the first 6 months of working for that organization. I was at the table with people like Wendell Primus and Nancy Pelosi talking about welfare policy from a recipient's perspective. So I wasn't in these spaces where I was having to kind of scream into the void about why this work was so important. I was being listened to. The women who we were taking with us on the trips were being listened to. And that opened up work for me with people like Legal Momentum, the Women's Policy Institute at NYU. And I would end up on these panels as a single mom on welfare, crafting space, not just for my voice, but for a lot of other young women to enter into. And so that for me, I think it really critical. I had attended other colleges before I got to Mills, And I have to say, I do not think I would have gotten the type of support in my career had I gone somewhere else. It's just very intentional.
Thank you so much for that, Anya. If anyone else wants to hop in, Jade. Yeah.
Jump in really quickly to say something far less inspirational than what my two fellow panelists have just conveyed. I think the reality for me, much like Anya, I was a single mom when I went to college for my undergrad program. So I enrolled in my undergrad program at 19 with a 1-year-old. So I was thinking from a very practical standpoint. I had done work at a very local level, doing work primarily within one county that I resided in. Then I expanded out to do work for an organization that covered sort of a 6-county footprint and led some some statewide work in that role as well. And I knew realistically, if I wanted to continue growing my career in the space that I was working in, which was in workforce development, that I needed a master's degree because I just wasn't going to be competitive in the marketplace without one. So I don't in any way mean to say that the education and learning I gained through that program wasn't also valuable, but my motivation was really to have those letters and that degree because I knew it was a door opener, and it was. And it proved to be what allowed me to kind of move on to national organizations after obtaining that credential. So not inspiring, but realistic. And certainly there was a lot to take away from the program and the learnings as well, but just a slightly different vantage point. It's a door opener.
Realistic is always inspiring, Jade. So, Heather, do you want to add to this or?
Sure, I'd like to maybe piggyback about what Anya and Jade have already said. Was I was a resumer. I came back into my education later in life, and it was also a career change. And the community and the environment at Mills was so supportive and engaging, not only with my peers and my fellow students, but my professors and my mentors there were really helpful in letting me learn more about this space that I hadn't worked in, which I had a passion for as a social justice advocate. I was able to transform that into channeling my passion into a career. And I also wanted to say that the Mills Career Development Department was a great asset, a huge help for me in helping me develop my resume, talking points, learning how to do interview skills, some of that more basic stuff that was all very new to me. It was just really amazing to have all that support and learning from the Mills team.
Thanks so much. So just for our next question, we've all heard the age-old adage, it's not always what you know, it's who you know. So I want to just talk a little bit about how have you built your professional network? How do you continue to build your professional network, and how has it influenced your career? And if folks who are listening in want to add that in the chat as well, any tips for others and how you're building your network, we'd love to see that as well. So does anyone want to hop in on that one? How have you built your professional network?
Sure. So if you look at LinkedIn, you see, or my career, you see that people, I was admonished once for job hopping and being all over the place and not staying in one sector. And the beauty of the way that I've been able to do the work that I've done is because of connections and building a network that allows me to go into different sectors and at its core do the same type of work. And so, a lot of the work that I do is about systems change, but I was rooted in DEI work. I still am. And it's been interesting to me to watch people still have a need for what at my core is social justice, political science kind of inspired work, but to do it within these systems that can be very stringent and rigid. Um, I think having a mentor is something that has also served me, and having mentors of different ages and at different stages in their career it's just been really important for me and allowed me to go from working at Cal State East Bay and winding up having the provost invite me to teach to becoming the first equity director in the county of Marin to then going and running a $36 million organization like OSF, which again was never in my that was not on my vision board. That was not something, the arts was not something I woke up and said, this is what I want to do. My career and the way that I was doing the work necessitated that move. And I think I've been I think I've been successful in doing this work in different spaces, but it's the network that has allowed me to do that and to move in and out of different sectors, which I think is really important, especially when you look at the times that we're in. If your whole life has been centered on one type of work or in one sector, it makes it really, really challenging to move into another space. And so I think yourself um, consider yourself able to move in and out of sectors and inspire yourself to do work in different spaces. Unless you're the type of person that just needs one thing, take the leap and do different things.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Other folks, we do have someone in the comments saying networking events. Definitely a great space. I agree with that. Dominique, you want to hop in?
Yeah, I was going to say one thing about networking events is making sure you're going to the right networking events and thinking about what you're trying to achieve. And that was something I one learned through like talking to the professors at Northeastern. One of those things where I was like, I was doing everything. I said yes to everything. And there's nothing wrong with saying yes to everything, but also you get burnt out as someone who is trying to recover from saying yes to everything. Um, so I would say yes to a lot of things. And it was like going to an event and it was like there was no one in this room that necessarily helped me like learn anything or advance my career. And so making sure that I'm really thinking strategically about who I'm connecting with. And I think that was a really great thing about being at Northeastern, being in those classrooms. A lot of people were people who were either already in the nonprofit field and had some experience and they brought that to the classroom, or they were coming from abroad and bringing the international experience of working at an international NGO. And then we also had the professors. So having that opportunity to talk to people to learn to how to be intentional about networking was really important. And then also it also then exposed me to a lot of varying groups and thinking about professional associations to get involved with. I learned about the Association of Fundraising Professionals because we talked about it in one of my classes. And I then became a part of the Association of Fundraising Professionals, did a fellowship through them so I can um, get some of the programming for free because, things are expensive for professional development. And now I'm on the board and I'm able to continue to grow my network and connect with other people.
Jay, it look like you might have wanted to hop in?
I'll hop in really quickly. I think those are all really important points, and I like the be strategic and don't say yes to everything, because it is hard to get maximum benefit when you're spreading yourself that thin. I think I would just add that from my personal experience anyhow, some of the most valuable networking from a kind of career development and career change perspective has been not through kind of looser networks or like networking events, but through really building relationships with people that I interact with in my current job on a regular basis. I think I've been fortunate in the sense that many of my roles have had me not just interacting with people from other organizations, from other states, from other types of sectors, but have had me like partnering with them over a period of time. And I think just really being someone who consistently sort of shows up and becomes a resource or a thought partner or a partner in another way to a large ish kind of network of people has been very valuable for me. So, I got my kind of first national position because I worked with a TA provider for this statewide grant that I was running, who was worked for a national organization based in Chicago, and we just established a relationship, and I demonstrated my value as an employee, et cetera, to her and to many colleagues on her team. And she like reached out to me and asked me if I wanted a job, essentially. So I think it's those kind of enduring interactions that have been most fruitful from a career perspective, at least in my, again, personal experience.
That's great. Awesome. Heather, I can go on to the next one unless you want to jump in.
No, I could just say that for me, I think I would just echo what other people have said also. But for me, one way is also my direct service volunteerism has been a great way to expand my network and my community with people that, for me, in our case, like who were at the community, we're actually serving and helping. In addition to having worked with different focus areas of different nonprofits, I've gotten to have kind of a nice diverse group of people, but we all have a similar passion for doing fundraising, social justice, and doing good work. So also, I just wanted to say that my alumni group, my former classmates, my professors, my mentors, LinkedIn, community networks, there's just so many ways to meet and greet people. But I also love whoever said that you don't have to say yes to everything, and being able to just conserve your energy and focus on the things that really matter to you.
Thank you. So there is a question in the chat, but I think, do we want to save all the questions to the end, Nicole, or do we want to address them as they come up?
As they come up, it'd be great too, because I feel like this one especially is really relevant to the current question. So it's up to you as the moderator. But whatever
Yeah,
works.
let's do it now. So we have a great question from Allison. How do you all recommend finding the right networking events, especially if you're pivoting from the corporate world into nonprofits and need to build your network? So Diane answered and said, join or just attend events by associations in your field. That makes a lot of sense. The same for me. I've tried to go from nonprofit to corporate, and I think it's really thinking about what the transferable skills are, looking into the organizations you're interested in, simply following their social media, their LinkedIns, their Twitters, seeing what events they have coming up, if there are volunteer opportunities, seeing who's in your network, whether it's just your LinkedIn network, who can also introduce you to someone, having just a one-on-one. I'm an organizer by trade, and you'd be surprised just having a genuine conversation with someone, what that could stir up. So I think those are some great initial tips, but anyone else have suggestions for Allison?
Yeah, I'll add to that. I'll plus one everything you said. I think one of your biggest tools is your own personal network. You never know who you know that might have a connection to a nonprofit, um, or just like figuring out what it's like to transition into from corporate to nonprofit. I personally myself have not done it, but have had lots of conversations with people who were like thinking about that transition and gave them the good, the bad, the ugly of joining the nonprofit world. We all know that it's not always pretty over here. As much as we are doing great work, it can be a little taxing. So having those really open and honest conversations with people in your network, but also making sure you're thinking about um, events that are happening for those nonprofits, as Jasmine said, but like going as a volunteer, volunteering at the events. A lot of the nonprofits, they are small but mighty, and they are constantly looking for volunteers. And it's a great way to get to know some of their staff and and pick their brains on those things. And then my last piece of advice is thinking about those professional associations. Um, like I'm a fundraiser by trade, and I go to all the fundraising things, but that's not to say that I won't go to, there are fun networking things for like CPAs that are in the nonprofit sector. I like to think I am still young at heart, and so I will still go to the young nonprofit networking events and engage with folks who are younger than me and they might not see themselves as a resource to me, but everyone can be a mentor, whether you're mentoring up, down, laterally. So making sure that you're not, being hesitant about things because of the title. Like, yeah, I'm not a CPA, but I'm in there.
Yes, love that. Okay. All right, we'll move on to the next question just in the interest of time. But how has your role evolved from when you began in the field? Have you had to wear different hats? And me knowing what I know about nonprofits, I'm gonna say yes for everyone. And is it what you expected?
I'll jump
Jade?
in quickly just to say, I have worn, I think, different hats in every single nonprofit role I have ever held. So there has always been kind of a multiple hat wearing experience, regardless of whether, again, it was a sort of smaller, more direct service providing type of nonprofit or a relatively large national nonprofit. That has been true. I think if I look at my role across the span of my career, I would say it has also evolved because in my, earlier career, when I was actually younger, I was doing more sort of direct service provision. As my career has advanced, quote unquote, I have done much less of that and have done more, overseeing teams and projects and strategic direction guiding and things like that versus doing kind of the on the ground direct service work that called me kind of into the nonprofit space to begin with. So that's just one thing I think it was evident to me kind of early in my career that if I wanted to, frankly, make more money and continue to um, develop from that vantage point, it meant changing the kind of work that I was doing in the nonprofit space. And that's become a reality and managing people and managing budgets and doing all of that kind of thing. So I think that's sort of the evolution. And I would also say in each role, it hasn't been what I've expected it to be entirely. So certainly, I think to some measure, it wasn't like a completely different job, but I think the reality has often played out to be slightly different from what I anticipated when I took the position. Not for, in a negative way by any means, but I think you learn a lot once you kind of get into a role. So.
Yes.
I would
Anya?
say that I never, I've never taken a role where it didn't expand into something else. And I've never gotten the expanded role and been completely aware that this was what I signed up for. And I think some of that is because, like a lot of you, I'm a doer. You get into a space and you see something, you're hired to do something, and you see all of the things that are going to be hurdles or obstacles or problematic or all of the opportunities, right? You have this mind of here are the things that are going to work really well, here are the things that need worked or to be worked on. And in order to actualize whatever role you've been hired for, if you're a strategic thinker, if you start honing in on those things, um, my last role at Oregon Shakespeare Festival, I came in that role as the director of DEI. I wound up being the managing director. I went from being the managing director to getting a call from the board when the leadership changed that said, we unanimously voted for you to be the interim COO. That was not on my bingo card. And because I'm not in the arts and don't have that background as an arts administrator, I had to do a lot of figuring out how to best support that organization in its bridging to whatever was going to be next. And that meant investment in what the organization needed and wanted, while also understanding that this was not the career goal that I had. So I've always, I don't think there's a single organization that I've worked for where my role has not started as one thing and expanded. And that expansion could be taking on more responsibility for another division in corporate, or in the nonprofit space, as Jade pointed out, you starting with these kind of direct services, and your administrative mind starts to kind of bleed into all of these other things. So you find yourself taking on more responsibility there. And I think expect the unexpected is kind of my motto in this work that I've done, because I have always walked into a space thinking I was showing up to do A and found myself at Q before I knew it. And that's just kind of the reality. And it, for me, especially in nonprofit work, and especially in nonprofit work, if you are somebody who strategizes and is about systems change within